Hey guys, we're going to be sticking with figure kits this week, and we're going to be looking at one of Hasegawa's 1/12 scale resin figure kits of their egg playing girls, specifically Rei. Let's open her on up and take a look. Get all that out. Now I'm going to leave these parts partially wrapped up, at least once we get it all out. Mainly because there are some very small and delicate parts that I don't want to get damaged. So, apologies there. So, let's get into her. Now, let's start with this upper part. Now, one thing I immediately noticed on a lot of these parts is that they do seem a little on the rough side. Let me just the light a little. Overall, it does not look like they did a lot of cleanup, if any, on the parts, which is actually, in my opinion at least, a good thing, as it's better that they don't do any cleanup and leave that for you, as opposed to over cleaning it and you losing a lot of detail. And so, I mean, you can see here with this hand nail area. Again, hopefully this is coming out on camera, but there's a lot of roughness, flashing, and you're going to need to do a decent amount of cleanup. Similarly, there's a large amount of seam lining around all the parts, something which you can expect with resin parts given the process of manufacture. It's an unfortunate downside. But at least here it does seem more pronounced. Again, so that is something you need to be aware of when you get to cleaning them. Similarly with these little bow parts, there's a lot of flashing and cleanup that's going to need to be done on them. But as I said, it's better you do it than potentially lose it when they manufacture it. Continuing on, again, hopefully on this hand you can see it a little more pronounced, the type of cleanup work you need to do, and similarly with this foot. Now, interestingly, on this, at least my copy, on this foot, she's pretty well flat-footed. You don't see that on the other foot, which we'll see in a minute. I think they did this partially to help with stability and balance once you attach her to some kind of base. As this particular leg, as you can see in the reference image, is going to be the main point where all the weight's going to be connecting. So that is something to be aware of. Again, much like the other arm part, fair amount of flashing and seam lining that's going to need to be cleaned up. But other than that, the casting quality is very high. A lot of detailing in the hands that really don't truly appreciate in most other forms. Let's move on to the main large part. As the majority of her was cast as a single part, obviously we can debate on whether or not that's the way to go. Personally, I think it would have been smarter had they done torso as its own part, including with the head, and had this second leg separate, just so that makes it a little easier to work with in terms of masking and cleanup. But thankfully, this part overall, there's going to be a lot less cleanup. Casting quality, again, is very high. All the detailing is just sharply there. You do have a nasty seam line there on the neck. That might be a little bit challenging, but with that exception, overall, fantastic job on the quality of this cast. Again, hopefully this will show up. Detailing in the face is very nice. Everything, especially in the smaller scale, comes out quite nicely. Now, let me get her back in. Moving on, She does come with a nice decal sheet. You've got several different sets of eyes to choose from, which I do applaud them for doing, as it does give you a lot more options. They also include these pattern pieces for the swimsuit, which obviously is going to be a lot easier to do as opposed to paint. Though, obviously, you also have the option to leave them off and do your own thing. Now, moving on to the instructions. Now, again, since there aren't that many pieces to this kit, you're going to need to use some form of super glue or epoxy glue to get everything together. So that is something to be aware of. Also, because it is resin, you'll want to give her a good bath before you do any type of painting work to get any remaining mold release agents off the resin, as paint will not stick to it. You'll have problems. Better to give her at least one, ideally 2 baths before you start, just to make sure everything's nice and clean. Once you've done that, now, thankfully, there was no real major pore stubs you're going to need to clean up, as Hasegawa has done a very good job of keeping those small overall. On all the parts, thankfully, they also do include a painting guide, which I do like. All the callouts are in Mr. Color Paints, so you will have to do a bit of mixing, but compared to the Max Factory kit we looked at last week that had none, this is a nice improvement. So, overall, well, first thing I need to mention is that this kit runs in the $40 to $50 range. So for 1/12 scale kit, she's not exactly cheap. However, the detailing is very high. The overall production value, I would say, in terms of how they laid out all the parts and the overall amount of cleanup you're going to need to do, is fairly minimal. So it's a catch-22. Do you pay more to get a potentially bigger kit like a Volks that ultimately you'll need to do a lot more cleanup with? Or do you get something like this that may be smaller and more expensive, but you can get done a lot quicker? So it's a mixed bag in that regards. Now, obviously, since it is a swimsuit figure kit, it's definitely going to be a lot more challenging in terms of painting, as you will have to do a lot of skin toning. So if you're prepared for that challenge, it is definitely one to consider. However, because of the higher cost per what you get, I would say maybe wait to see if this one goes on sale somewhere, or at this point, I've not seen her back in stock anywhere. So this may be one you have to simply bite the bullet and get when you can. So that was a look at Hasegawa's 1/12 scale Rei figure from their Eggplant Girls line. Great casting, high quality kit, but for the scale, a pretty steep price. So until next time.